Have you ever been driving down the road and had this happen to you? Today we're going to show you how to fix that. Welcome back, everyone. This is Joe at Forge, where I share my passion for creating, building, and racing high-performance vehicles. On this channel, I do a lot of how-to guides on custom fabrication, product reviews from the vendors that support our builds, as well as toss in some behind-the-scenes vlogs to show you guys what goes on here at Forge Performance. So if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. And if this is the type of content that you are interested in, please consider subscribing. Now, let's get on to the video. All right, guys, welcome back. Joe at Forged. Today we're going to do a little product review on something that we've come up with on our track cars over the years. The GT-R steering column has these two braces that hold the tilt and the telescoping to the frame of the car, and it is very prone to failure. And basically, you end up with a steering wheel that's just flopping around like this in your lap. If you're on track or driving down the road, that can be very disconcerting. I mean, you're not going to crash the car, but if all of a sudden you're up here and then the thing just flops down, it's a very common thing to happen, especially if you take your car to HPTE driving day or you're aggressively driving on a mountain canyon road or something like that. So we've come up with this product, which is basically just a very reinforced version of the factory. The factory is just a folded over piece of metal that sandwiches in between there with a bolt. So this basically goes in place of that to firmly lock the steering column in place. So today on the video we're going to show you how to take it apart. We get a ton of questions. When this thing is made and it hasn't failed yet and you're doing this preemptively, this is a very easy install. All you do is you do one side at a time. It'll slip right in, no problem. But we get a ton of calls and we thought it would be a good idea to make a video on this today because when it's already laying in your lap, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get it done. So today, Emilio's going to show us how to get your steering column back out of your lap. All right, guys, you're pretty much going to be laying on your back here on the ground pretty much the whole time. But the first step is you got to drop this lower panel down. So Emilio's going to take a screwdriver here to release the handle pull and the OBD2 connector. So you can drop the panel down. And then the pull handle is just a 12 millimeter or a 10 millimeter socket. You could use a screwdriver on it, but much easier with a 10 millimeter on the gun. You'll pull that forward to release it. Then you got to pop this side panel off. You can use a trim tool or screwdriver, whatever you have available to you. And then you got to pull this sill off and just get it out of the way so you can drop the panel. And then the rest of the panel is just held in with pop tabs. So you just kind of reach around and pop it until the whole thing falls out of the way. All right, guys, so the next step here is this plate. It's got the 410 millimeters. You need to remove that so you can gain easy access to the steering column mounts themselves. All right, guys, so now that we have this off, you can see underneath here what has actually failed. So you see that big 12 millimeter bolt in this, where it's supposed to slip up in there in that piece. That's what we're gonna remove and replace with our piece. So just getting a good shot of this now because it's very hard to show you what we're gonna be doing once Emilio's up underneath there. So that is the part that this slips out of and gets bent out of shape. So that's what we're gonna replace. So Emilio's gonna hop onto that next. All right, guys, so what he's doing here is to use the factory mount to just slip it up into place on one side. If you try to do this with just our piece, you're gonna spend hours on it. So our trick is to get the bent out tab and re-engage it to the steering column so it's in place on the one side, and then it's a fairly straightforward job. So I've moved around to the other side of the car here just so you guys can see what we're dealing with. You have to get everything to line back up, and that's the hardest part. And you know, we've done this multiple times and we still struggle with it a little bit ourselves. So just to give you guys an idea what needs to be done to get it back into place, you need to slide that U-shaped bracket back onto the column. As you can see there, that's what we removed from the other side, and that's what the column slips out of. So we are basically putting those back into place, and then we put our reinforcement bracket on top of it. So that's what Emilio's getting ready to do right now. We'll slip the other side back in. All right guys, now the plate's gonna get slipped up in there. I'll do my best to get it captured, but at least we'll show you after it's done. But you just kind of slip it up over that stud, and you're gonna use the Nordlock washer and the supplied nut. Those washers are basically a real fancy lock washer that will not back off, so you don't have to worry about this thing loosening up on you when you're racing out on track. So you put those Nordlock washers on, and you put the supplied nut, tighten it up, and we move to the other side. You'll see the slit in the plate makes sense there. There is a left and a right, and the slit goes right around that steel piece for the column, right there. All right, let's move on to the other side and we'll be done. And once we have this locked back in place, this install is a lot easier, because now the other side, you just kind of slip it right on there. And I got a perfect shot of this side, so you can really see how Emilio slips this in there. So you got that slitted piece that goes on to the steel portion of the column. You just kind of will shimmy it in there until it lines up over the top of the stud. All right guys, as we said before, you just come in there with the Nordlock washers. And the supplied nut. And just tighten it back up. And as you can see, as he's tightening that, essentially this plate sandwiches the factory piece so it cannot be pulled down or slip off of the mount. And we get those fairly snug. And then same with the other side, we'll just make sure it's all tight. And job done. So basically now we just pop everything back into place. The steering column now no longer lays in your lap unless you want it to. So once you have it all installed, all you're gonna do is put that plate back on, the 4 10mm bolts. Use your little impact gun to snug them up, and then you pop the plastic piece back into its tabs. And as you can see here, we did not fully remove the lower trim panel. You don't need to. You certainly can, but it's not required. You just kind of find its way in here, and it'll just pop straight into place. Put the door sill back in, the lower trim panel, the side trim panel, and then we finally put the hood latch back in. So you got to make sure you slide it back into the tabs that hold it in place, and the 10mm screw nuts. And that's it. Just make sure everything lines up so you don't cross-thread any of your bolts. That's never fun. And this customer will be back on the road in no time. All right, so as you can see, that was a fairly simple job. It can be a little bit frustrating, especially if the thing's already laying in your lap. But just use a little bit of patience and know that you have to get those U-shaped factory clamps that hold the steering column up back in place before you can install our reinforcement piece. But as you can see now, everything's locked in. This thing ain't going nowhere. This guy came in for some tuning and realized that, hey man, we ain't gonna be able to drive this thing on the road until we fix that. And this is a very common problem, guys. So you'll see a link in the description below as to how to buy it on the Forge Performance web store. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to call us at the shop or email us at sales@forgeperformance.com. And until the next video, we'll see you next time.